Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. I have a feeling that some viewers will very much get a kick out of the very final development which we cover today. But first up, as we usually do, we begin with the economy. China's local fiscal crisis is an area we've been following very closely on China Update. Yesterday, Chinese financial media outlet Yicai reported that, in a very telling development, governments have already issued over 97% of the additional 2 trillion yuan, $280 billion special bond quota announced last month. These special bonds are for refinancing in order to replace existing hidden debt. The 2 trillion yuan was made available by the central government less than a month ago, when it also lifted the debt ceiling for local governments to help these local authorities resolve their hidden debt issues, which is estimated to be in the trillions of dollars. As of the end of 2023, China's foreign minister reported that local hidden debt was 14.3 trillion yuan, $1.97 trillion. However, some economists estimate that the total amount of hidden debt is closer to 50 to 60 trillion yuan, $6 trillion more than the government's estimate. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, estimates that this debt was 60 trillion yuan, $8.3 trillion at the end of 2023, which is 47.6% of GDP. Now note, this is not total government debt. It's not even total local government debt. This is estimated total hidden local government debt. It is no surprise then that local governments have already sucked up this 2 trillion yuan of special bonds. Wen Laicheng, professor at the Central University of Finance and Economics, told Yicai this week, quote, "The fact that local governments have basically completed the issuance of 2 trillion CNY yuan worth of bond reduction quotas in just 1 month shows that the new debt reduction policies are being implemented quickly. It also reflects that local governments are under great pressure to resolve debts and urgently need this financial support." End quote. Local governments have experienced a slowdown in growth in fiscal revenue in the past few years, largely due to a big drop in land sales resulting from the sluggish real estate market caused by the wider property crisis, making it more difficult for them to complete the goal set by the central government of resolving hidden debts by 2028. Yicai writes that the majority of the bonds that have been issued this time have longer terms than usual, at over 10 years and up to 30 years. The interest rates are generally below 2.5%. Quotas are allocated according to the scale of hidden debt that some provincial level regions have. So the larger the amount of hidden debt, the larger the quota. China's most developed and wealthiest cities, places like Beijing and Shanghai, have very little to no hidden debt. But there are provinces, especially away from the coasts, that have long struggled with issues of corruption and poor fiscal management, that have massive levels of hidden debt, and as we've discussed in previous episodes, are in a state of de facto bankruptcy. Next up for the economy. According to 2 recent surveys published this week by Chambers of Commerce, British and German companies operating in China are facing increased challenges and are concerned about their prospects for next year. The British Chamber of Commerce in China reported that 58% of UK firms found it harder to operate in China over the past year, marking the 5th consecutive year a majority of respondents noted worsening conditions. Meanwhile, a survey by the German Chamber of Commerce in China revealed that fewer than 1/3 of German businesses are optimistic about the industry's prospects in 2025. A record low. These findings come amidst declining foreign investment in China, influenced by geopolitical tensions, a sluggish economy, and intensified competition from local firms in sectors such as automotive. China's weak consumer demand has also led for the government this year to introduce measures like cash handouts for those in financial difficulty. The possibility of US President-elect Donald Trump implementing higher tariffs on Chinese imports also adds to the uncertainty. German businesses identified weak demand and pricing pressures as major challenges, while UK firms pointed to China's economic conditions as their primary concern. The German Chamber noted that only 51% of German firms plan to increase investment over the next 2 years, the lowest figure since 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic. In contrast, 76% of British firms intend to maintain or increase spending next year, which the British Chamber interpreted as a sign of stabilising investment levels, from the British at least. The surveys were conducted from September to November, with more than 300 British firms and 546 German companies participating. Next up, we have one more economic update to cover, and then we move on to Taiwan. But first, just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. It's just one click of the mouse, but it's a tremendous help for me and the channel, and I deeply appreciate it. While you're there, if you have not subscribed already and you think you'd like to watch another one of these episodes to be on top of China, maybe consider subscribing as well. Hit the bell notification and you'll be on top of these updates as they're released. Sharing, liking, subscribing is all a tremendous help, and for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep the channel financially sustainable, I primarily rely on your support to keep going financially. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Next up, for the economy. After many years of generating huge profits from the PRC, American automaker GM is now facing a very different environment in the country. On Wednesday this week, GM said that it will write down the value of its stake in partnerships with China's state-owned SAIC Motor by $2.6 billion to $2.9 billion, or nearly half of their value. The move is in recognition of the company's dimmer long-term outlook for the business, it said in a securities filing. GM separately expects a $2.7 billion hit from restructuring actions such as factory closures aimed at returning its China operations to profitability. US-based The Wall Street Journal writes that, quote, GM has been losing money in China throughout this year, a marked change from the past decades when the company reliably padded its bottom line with about $2 billion a year from the country, end quote. US-based Bloomberg similarly writes this week, quote, once a linchpin of GM's global strategy, the company's China business is in freefall. The automaker hasn't given many details of its plans, but the partners are looking at difficult options that will shrink its presence. The joint venture will likely cut workers and shutter plants. GM is looking at axing specific models, turning brands like Buick, once the preferred car of the Chinese emperor in the late 1920s, from a household name into a minor player. Those decisions will have huge implications for GM's willingness to stay in China beyond 2027 when its SAIC deal expires. The company said it has no plans to leave and that the planned cutbacks will do the trick, but it will have to assess how long it can tough it out amid price wars. GM is struggling to compete on price with domestic models subsidized by the Chinese government and could eventually leave the venture if losses persist. And if SAIC is no longer getting cutting-edge technology or a brand bump from working with a well-known American manufacturer, it may have a reason to walk away, end quote. Next up, yesterday, Thursday, Taiwan President William Lai-Ching-te, during a brief stopover in Guam, held phone and video calls with members of the US Congress, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and Senator Roger Wicker, the highest-ranking Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. According to Lai's spokesperson, during the phone call, Johnson reassured Lai that supporting Taiwan and facing up to challenges from China has bipartisan support on Capitol Hill. Beijing was quick to condemn the phone conversation, with PRC Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian expressing a few hours after, quote, in recent weeks we have made it clear our serious opposition more than once to the US's arranging for Lai-Ching-te's stopovers and having official interactions with the Taiwan region. Taiwan will take resolute and strong measures to defend our nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity, end quote. Meanwhile, Taiwan-based United Daily News reported on Wednesday of this week that US personnel helped the Taiwan Coast Guard Administration's Special Task Unit, STU, simulate a boarding exercise off the port city of Kaohsiung. The report was based on sightings and information from military enthusiasts, with one photo showing 3 US military personnel aboard a large assault boat alongside members of the STU, a paramilitary special police unit. And on this theme, also this week, Beijing imposed new sanctions on 13 US firms, quote, over arms sales to Taiwan, end quote. Companies included Shield AI, which develops autonomous technology for aircraft to enable drones to execute a mission without GPS, communications, or remote pilots. Speaking in September during a House Armed Services panel hearing in the US, the company's co-founder, Brandon Tsang, mentioned China among adversaries able to deploy technology to eclipse traditional weapons systems. Quote, AI pilots that enable edge autonomy are critically important because Russia, China, and Iran are jamming GPS and communication links to stop our legacy drones and weapons that rely on GPS or communications, and have proliferated surface-to-air missile systems to stop our manned fighter jets. End quote. On the sanctions, veteran China analyst Bill Bishop observed today, quote, this is another round of more symbolic than substantive sanctions, but it will have the effect of increasing efforts to strategically decouple. End quote. And finally, on the topic of Taiwan, and for today's video, this week Paraguay kicked out a Chinese envoy after he urged the country to cut ties with Taiwan. On Thursday, the South American country's foreign ministry said it had revoked the visa of Xu Wei, a senior Chinese envoy to Latin America, who was in Paraguay for the annual UNESCO meeting. The Chinese diplomat was given 24 hours to leave the country. UK-based The Guardian reports that the day before, Xu skipped the UNESCO session and instead turned up at Congress in the capital, quote, where he caused a diplomatic stir by calling on Paraguay to ditch Taiwan, the self-governing democratic island of 23 million people that China claims as its territory, end quote. On Thursday, Paraguay's foreign ministry declared him persona non grata, quote, over interference in internal affairs, end quote. Words which carry, to Beijing's ears, very stinging irony. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.